The Lost Templar Cipher, Secrets of Forbidden Knowledge. For centuries, whispers spoke of a hidden manuscript, a code guarded by fire, blood, and silence. A secret that could reshape kingdoms, cure plagues, and unlock the stars themselves. The Templars swore to protect it, and others swore to steal it. But when the cipher is revealed, one question remains: will it save the world, or doom it forever? The year was 1307, and the storm of betrayal had begun. Across Europe, the Knights Templar, once revered as guardians of the Holy Land, faced a fate of fire and accusation. Yet even as their fortresses fell and their banners were torn down, whispers told of a secret preserved, a cipher so powerful that it could rewrite history itself. In a remote, shadowed chamber beneath the ancient walls of a Templar stronghold, a single monk worked tirelessly, ink flowing like molten gold across fragile parchment. Symbols danced in his candlelight, cryptic signs, strange alphabets, and diagrams of hidden stars. This was not mere writing, it was a map to knowledge forbidden to all but the worthy. Legends say that the cipher contained instructions to a lost artifact, an object of immense power, rumored to be the Holy Grail, a source of ancient wisdom, or even a relic that could tip the balance of kings. But only those who could read the hidden code, who understood the whispers of the past and the secrets of geometry and astronomy, could hope to follow its path. Outside, the world burned with suspicion and greed. Inquisitors hunted every Templar, leaving ruins in their wake. Yet in this chamber, protected by silent corridors and ancient wards, the cipher survived, waiting for the day someone brave enough and pure of heart would decipher its riddles and unlock the knowledge that could change the fate of nations. Centuries passed, and the world forgot the name of the last Templar scribe. Yet bloodlines carry memory, and whispers of destiny linger in the veins of the worthy. In a quiet village perched on a cliff above the Mediterranean, a young historian named Elias discovered an old, dust-covered manuscript in his family's library. The paper was fragile, the ink faded, but the symbols leapt off the page with a strange urgency. As he traced the letters with his fingers, a chill ran down his spine. The manuscript was a fragment of the legendary Templar Cipher, a key to secrets that had shaped kingdoms and toppled empires. Each line hinted at hidden vaults, encoded messages, and paths known only to those who dared to read the past with eyes unclouded by greed. Elias felt a calling he could not ignore. Nights were spent deciphering ancient codes, matching them with maps of catacombs, abandoned castles, and forgotten monasteries across Europe. He knew that each step carried risk. Rumors of those who sought the Templar secrets for power were alive even now, operating in shadows, ready to destroy anyone who came close. Yet in his heart burned the courage of the Templar line, the same determination that had protected the cipher through fire and persecution. With lantern in hand and resolve in his soul, Elias prepared to leave his quiet life behind. The adventure had begun. The lost secrets of the Knights Templar were awakening, and he would follow their trail wherever it might lead, even into the darkest corners of history itself. Elias had only just set out on his journey when the first clues began to appear. Hidden in the margins of the ancient manuscript were cryptic sketches of arches, stairways, and celestial symbols that did not belong to any known library or cathedral. Each drawing seemed to pulse with meaning, as if daring him to unravel its secrets. His first stop was an abandoned Templar chapel on the outskirts of Carcassonne, its stone walls weathered by centuries yet imbued with an air of solemn mystery. The carved symbols on the altar matched those in the manuscript, an unmistakable signature left by the last scribe. Elias traced them with trembling fingers, feeling the weight of centuries pressing on him. Somewhere beneath the chapel, a passage might be hidden, leading to the vaults where knowledge had been preserved from inquisitors and invaders alike. But danger shadowed his every step. Across Europe, shadowy societies, descendants of rival factions and secret scholars, had kept watch over the Templar relics. Some sought the cipher for greed, others for power. The slightest mistake could bring them down upon Elias before he even realized the magnitude of the secret he held. Night fell, and the chapel grew colder, more alive with unseen presences. Whispers seemed to echo through the stone halls, urging him forward yet warning him to proceed with caution. Elias knew he was no longer alone in the pursuit. The first clues were more than hints. They were tests, traps and riddles left by the Templars themselves to ensure that only the worthy could uncover the path to their hidden knowledge. Elias' fingers lingered over the final symbol carved into the chapel wall. The stone vibrated faintly under his touch, and a subtle click echoed in the silence. Dust fell from a seam that had been invisible for centuries. Before him, a narrow passage yawned into darkness, a secret corridor left untouched since the fall of the Templar Order. The air was cool and damp, carrying the scent of earth and ancient stone. Lantern held high, Elias stepped cautiously, aware that one wrong move could trigger centuries-old traps. Every step felt alive, the walls themselves whispering forgotten warnings. As he descended deeper, faint carvings on the stone depicted the trials of the Templars: loyalty, courage, and wisdom rewarded, greed and cowardice punished. Halfway down, a soft rustle echoed behind him. Heart pounding, Elias spun, but the corridor was empty. Shadows seemed to shift and dance, playing tricks on his mind. He realized that the path itself was a guardian, testing his resolve. Only those truly committed to the pursuit of knowledge could continue unscathed. At the end of the passage, he discovered a small chamber. Inside, a pedestal held a fragile scroll wrapped in leather and tied with a crimson ribbon. The manuscript shimmered in the lantern's glow, as if aware of his presence. Elias' hands trembled. This was more than a clue. It was a fragment of the cipher itself, a piece of the Templar legacy that had survived wars, fire, and betrayal. He carefully unrolled the scroll. Symbols, constellations, and cryptic maps filled the parchment. Each line pulsed with a hidden logic, a challenge demanding intellect, patience, and courage. Elias knew then, the Real journey had just begun. The cipher would lead him across lands and centuries, into dangers and mysteries no one alive had ever dared to face. Elias spread the fragile scroll across the pedestal, the cryptic symbols glimmering faintly in the lantern light. Each constellation, line, and mark formed a riddle that seemed to stretch across centuries, demanding knowledge of both history and the stars. Hours passed as he traced patterns, deciphering hidden directions that led to another fragment of the legendary Templar cipher. But shadows lurked beyond the chamber. The moment Elias pieced together the first sequence, he sensed movement behind the stone doorway. A low whisper of footsteps echoed through the passage. Someone, or something, was following him. The secret corridors of the Templar stronghold were not as deserted as he had believed. Elias' heart raced. Rival seekers of the cipher had been watching for centuries, and their descendants still lingered in the shadows, guarding fragments of forbidden knowledge. He had always known that the pursuit of truth carried risk, but nothing had prepared him for the immediacy of danger. With quick thinking, he hid the scroll beneath loose stones and extinguished the lantern, letting the shadows conceal his presence. Two figures passed through the corridor, cloaked and silent, their eyes scanning every corner, their hands brushing over the walls as if sensing the presence of the ancient cipher. Elias held his breath, every heartbeat echoing like a drum of warning. When the intruders finally moved on, he emerged from the darkness, realizing the true cost of following the path of the Templars. Knowledge, it seemed, was never freely given. It was protected by secrets, tests, and threats, and only those who could navigate both mind and peril would ever uncover the full legacy of the Lost Cipher. When the echoes of the intruders faded, Elias returned to the pedestal and retrieved the scroll. His hands shook, not from fear, but from the weight of realization. The cipher was alive with hidden meaning, as though the Templars themselves had inscribed their will into the parchment. By candlelight, he began to align the constellation symbols with a star map he carried in his satchel. Slowly, the puzzle unraveled. The stars pointed not to Jerusalem, nor to Rome, but to a remote monastery high in the Pyrenees. The map showed a cross etched into the mountains, its arms stretching across valleys and rivers. At the heart of the cross lay a hidden vault. Elias felt his pulse quicken. This was the first true destination, the beginning of a journey across Europe where each site concealed another fragment of the cipher. But the scroll also carried warnings, drawings of serpents coiled around chalices, and words scrawled in Latin, "Only the pure of heart shall drink without poison." He packed the manuscript carefully, knowing that every step forward drew him closer to both revelation and danger. The rivals who had prowled the corridors would not stop now. The moment he left Carcassonne, they would follow, driven by greed and obsession. Before dawn, Elias mounted a small horse he had borrowed from the village and turned toward the mountains. The road ahead was treacherous, filled with crumbling bridges, deep forests, and unseen watchers. Yet something within him burned brighter than fear, the call of destiny, the inheritance of a forgotten brotherhood. As the sun rose behind him, Elias whispered a vow to the silent stones of the chapel. "I will find the truth the Templars died to protect. No shadow, no rival, no darkness will keep it hidden." The mountains awaited, and with them, the next chapter of the cipher's mystery. The Pyrenees rose like jagged guardians against the horizon, their snow-capped peaks glowing beneath a pale winter sun. Elias' journey took him through narrow passes and silent forests, where the wind carried echoes of forgotten hymns. Days passed before the monastery appeared, perched precariously on a cliff, its stone walls blending with the mountain itself, as though it had been carved from the living rock. The monastery was ancient, far older than the crumbling chapels Elias had studied. Its wooden gates were bound with iron, marked by symbols he recognized from the cipher, crosses interwoven with stars and circles. When he knocked, the sound seemed to vanish into the mountain air. At last, the gates creaked open, and a hooded monk greeted him without a word, his eyes reflecting both suspicion and recognition. Inside, the air smelled of incense and candle wax. The monks moved in silence, their faces hidden in shadow. Elias was guided to the scriptorium, where manuscripts lined the shelves in orderly rows. Yet his eyes were drawn to the floor. Beneath his feet lay a mosaic of constellations, perfectly matching those on his scroll. The hooded monk handed him a single object, a silver chalice engraved with serpents. Elias' breath caught. It was the same symbol from the warning in the cipher, "Only the pure of heart shall drink without poison." A test. The Templars had guarded their knowledge not only with codes and maps, but with trials that measured the courage and truth within a seeker's soul. As the chalice was filled with dark, fragrant wine, Elias understood this was no ordinary monastery. It was a sanctuary of the Templar legacy, a place where the unworthy would falter, and only the faithful would proceed. His hand trembled as he lifted the chalice to his lips, the eyes of centuries upon him. The chalice felt heavier than stone in Elias' hand, though it was wrought of silver. The dark wine shimmered strangely in the candlelight, as if alive with secrets of its own. Around him, the monks formed a silent circle, their hoods hiding their faces, their presence pressing on him like unseen judges. Elias raised the cup to his lips. The scent was sharp, metallic, almost bitter. His heart pounded with the words of the cipher, "Only the pure of heart shall drink without poison." Was it merely symbolic? Or had the monks truly preserved some ancient draught that would kill the unworthy? He drank. The liquid burned like fire as it touched his tongue, spreading heat through his chest and into his veins. His vision blurred, and the room spun with colors: gold, crimson, deep shadows shifting like waves. For a moment, Elias thought he would collapse. But then, as though unseen hands steadied him, the fire turned to warmth, and the poison to clarity. His breath steadied, his heartbeat slowed. He remained standing. A murmur passed through the monks, and their circle parted. The hooded leader stepped forward, his voice deep and resonant. "You have endured. The Templar path is open to you." From beneath his robe, the monk revealed a small wooden casket, sealed with wax. He set it upon the mosaic floor, and with a single motion, broke the seal. Inside lay another fragment of the cipher, older than the one Elias had found in Carcassonne, its parchment brittle but glowing faintly in the lantern light. Elias knew this was no ordinary map. The symbols pointed beyond mountains and rivers, across borders and centuries. The next destination was clear, a fortress buried under shifting sands, where the Templars had hidden something they feared the world was not yet ready to see. His journey was only beginning. The journey from the Pyrenees carried Elias through winding roads, then across the Mediterranean by ship. Days turned into weeks, until the air grew dry and heavy with sand. He had entered the endless desert, where shifting dunes swallowed entire cities and only the stars offered guidance. By night, the cipher fragment revealed its meaning. Aligning the symbols with constellations overhead, Elias traced a path toward a forgotten fortress buried beneath the sands of Egypt. It was here, the manuscript whispered, that the Templars had hidden their most precious secret, something even kings had feared to possess. But Elias was not alone. From the moment he left the monastery, he had felt eyes upon him. In Cairo, he had seen cloaked men lingering near the markets, vanishing whenever he turned. Now, in the vast emptiness of the desert, faint silhouettes trailed in the distance, following his caravan at the edge of sight. Rivals, descendants of those who had once hunted the Templars. One night, as he camped near the ruins of an ancient well, the silence shattered. Figures emerged from the dunes, their blades glinting in the moonlight. Elias grabbed the satchel holding the cipher and ran, weaving through broken stone and forgotten pillars. His pursuers were swift, their voices echoing in a language he barely understood, demanding he surrender what was not his. But the desert, too, was a guardian. A sudden sandstorm rose, fierce and blinding, engulfing friend and foe alike. The attackers cursed and vanished into the howling winds, while Elias shielded. After days of weary travel, guided only by the cipher and the constellations above, Elias reached the place the manuscript described. Before him stretched nothing but dunes, an ocean of golden waves shimmering beneath the merciless sun. Yet the symbols had led him here, this desolate nowhere. He pressed onward, scanning the ground for signs. At last, half buried in the sand, he saw it, the faint outline of a cross carved into black stone. Brushing away the desert dust, Elias revealed a staircase descending into the earth, its steps worn but intact, shielded from centuries by the shifting dunes. Lantern in hand, he descended into the darkness. The air grew cooler, heavy with the scent of dust and forgotten stone. At the bottom lay an immense hall, its vaulted ceiling upheld by pillars carved with Latin inscriptions and stars. This was no ordinary fortress. It was a sanctuary carved by the Templars themselves, built to withstand time and conquest. As he explored, Elias discovered murals depicting knights traveling across deserts, ships sailing under strange constellations, and men bowing before an object hidden in light. His pulse quickened. The Templars had not only guarded relics, they had hidden knowledge, truths that challenged the very order of kingdoms. At the center of the hall stood a sealed iron door, its surface etched with both Christian crosses and Egyptian hieroglyphs. It was a fusion of cultures, as if the Templars had joined their secrets with the wisdom of the ancients. Upon the door, words glowed faintly in the lantern's reflection. Only those who bear the mark of both faith and knowledge may enter. Elias traced the cipher symbols once more. The fragments he carried were not only maps, they were keys. Somewhere within his satchel lay the missing piece that could open this door and reveal what the Templars had sworn to protect. But in the silence of the underground fortress, he heard it again, the soft echo of footsteps that were not his own. Elias' lantern flickered as he knelt before the iron door. The carvings seemed to shimmer in the glow, Latin verses intertwined with Egyptian hieroglyphs, as if two worlds had merged into a single secret. The words etched into the surface echoed in his mind, "Only those who bear the mark of both faith and knowledge may enter." From his satchel, Elias drew the fragments of the cipher. Aligning them carefully, he noticed for the first time that the parchments formed not just a map, but a sigil. One half was a cross, sharp and angular, the mark of the Templars. The other half curved like a scarab, symbol of the Nile and the Pharaohs. Only when joined did the image complete itself, a fusion of two traditions, two parts of wisdom. He pressed the sigil against the cold metal. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, with a groan that echoed through the stone chamber, gears hidden for centuries shifted. Dust rained from the ceiling as the iron door shuddered, then slowly opened. A breath of ancient air swept over him, dry yet strangely alive, carrying whispers from a forgotten age. Beyond the threshold stretched a vast chamber lit by shafts of moonlight filtering through cracks in the ceiling. Shelves carved into the walls brimmed with scrolls sealed in wax, manuscripts bound in strange leather, and relics gleaming faintly in the darkness. This was no treasure of gold, it was a treasury of knowledge. The lost writings of philosophers, mathematicians, and alchemists, preserved by the Templars from the ashes of Alexandria, from the ruins of forgotten empires. Elias' heart raced. He had uncovered proof that legends were true. Knowledge that could reshape the world lay before him. But then, a sound. The faint clatter of stone. Elias spun around, his lantern trembling. The rivals had found the entrance. The sanctuary of secrets was no longer his alone. The chamber of knowledge trembled with echoes as Elias backed toward the shelves, his lantern casting long shadows across the ancient scrolls. The iron door behind him groaned once more, then burst open. Cloaked figures poured inside, their eyes glinting with greed beneath the flicker of torchlight. "Hand it over," One voice hissed, sharp as steel. "The cipher belongs to us." Elias clutched the satchel against his chest. He could feel the centuries of knowledge pulsing around him. The wisdom of Alexandria, the forbidden alchemy of the East, the star maps of forgotten mathematicians. To surrender it now would mean condemning the world to shadows ruled by the few. The intruders advanced, their blades catching the lantern's glow. Yet before they could strike, the chamber itself responded. The floor rumbled, and dust fell from the ceiling. The shelves lit faintly with inscriptions, glowing as if stirred awake by the presence of unworthy hands. Elias realized with awe and terror that the fortress had not only been built to protect knowledge, it had been designed to defend it. Suddenly, a statue near the chamber's center shifted. What Elias had thought was stone moved with grinding force, revealing a towering guardian clad in armor, its face an unyielding mask of a Templar knight. In its hands was a great sword, shimmering with an otherworldly light. The intruders froze, terror flashing in their eyes. The guardian's voice thundered through the chamber. "Only the chosen may pass. The rest shall be judged." The cloaked figures scattered in panic, some fleeing back into the desert passage. Elias stood rooted, torn between fear and awe. The guardian's gaze fell upon him, the light of its eyes piercing into his soul. For a moment, silence reigned. Then, with deliberate slowness, the knight lowered its blade and pointed toward a sealed alcove at the far wall. Elias understood. The cipher had more to reveal, but only if he proved worthy of its final test. Elias' footsteps echoed as he approached the alcove the guardian had revealed. The air grew heavier with every step, as though unseen hands pressed against his shoulders. Behind him, the intruders had fled into the desert night, leaving only silence and the towering sentinel watching over him. The alcove opened into a narrow corridor, its walls carved with scenes of sacrifice and devotion. Templar knights were depicted kneeling before altars, shielding manuscripts from fire, guiding pilgrims through storms. Yet woven among these images were older symbols, Egyptian gods, Greek philosophers, even fragments of Hebrew script. The message was clear. The Templars had not merely guarded Christian relics. They had gathered the wisdom of all ages, weaving a tapestry of knowledge meant for the worthy alone. At the end of the corridor stood a stone pedestal. Upon it lay a single codex, bound in crimson leather, its cover etched with both a cross and the eye of Horus. The cipher fragments in Elias' satchel seemed to vibrate as he drew closer, as though eager to reunite with their origin. But before he could touch the codex, a voice filled the chamber, not from any human throat, but rising from the very stones. "Knowledge is power. Power corrupts. Tell us, Seeker, what will you do with what we give?" Elias froze. His mind flooded with images. Kings using this knowledge to wage war, greedy men twisting it for domination. But then came another vision, the healing of plagues, the ending of hunger, the stars guiding humanity into new realms. He bowed his head, placing his hand upon the codex. "I will guard it as you did," he whispered, "and not for myself, but for those yet to come." The silence stretched. Then the pedestal glowed softly, and the codex opened on its own, revealing pages of diagrams, formulas, and prophecies written in many tongues. Elias had passed the final test. The legacy of the Templars was now his to carry. The crimson codex glowed faintly in Elias' hands, its pages alive with ink that seemed untouched by time. As he turned the first sheet, his breath caught. This was no ordinary manuscript. It was a convergence of centuries, a collection of wisdom rescued from flames, wars, and the collapse of empires. The first pages bore fragments from the Library of Alexandria, lost treatises of philosophers whose names had vanished from memory. Diagrams showed machines that could harness the power of wind and water far beyond their age. There were medical texts describing cures for plagues long thought unstoppable, and star charts mapping constellations invisible to the naked eye. But as Elias turned deeper, the writings grew stranger. Alchemical formulas glimmered with symbols that seemed to shift under the light, as though written in a language that bridged this world and another. Prophecies followed, warning of ages when greed would rise, when knowledge would be chained by those unworthy to wield it. Yet within the warnings lay hope, a path for humanity to transcend fear and tyranny, if only the wisdom was placed in the right hands. Elias' heart raced as realization struck. This was the true Templar treasure, not gold, not relics, but knowledge. Knowledge capable of lifting kingdoms or destroying them. Knowledge meant to unite faiths, not divide them. It was a torch passed through centuries of shadows, waiting for one who would protect it until the world was ready. Behind him, the guardian knight remained silent, its sword lowered. The chamber was calm, almost reverent, as if it too bowed before the Codex. Elias closed the book gently, the weight of destiny pressing on him. He was now its custodian. But as he slid the Codex into his satchel, a new sound broke the silence, the faint echo of footsteps returning. The rivals were not finished. The knowledge of the ages had found its keeper, but the war to protect it had only begun. The echo of footsteps grew louder, bouncing against the stone corridors like a war drum. Elias pressed his back against the cold wall, clutching the satchel that held the Codex of Light. Every instinct screamed to run, but one mistake in this labyrinth would end everything. The guardian knight stirred once more, raising its sword, not toward Elias, but toward the advancing intruders. From the darkness of the passage, torchlight flickered, casting grotesque shadows of men armed with rifles and greed. Their leader's voice rang out, harsh and triumphant. "Find him. The treasure is ours." Elias knew he had only moments. He whispered a prayer to the nameless scholars who had preserved this wisdom, then dashed into a narrow passage veiled by hanging roots. The ancient corridor twisted like a serpent, leading him upward. Behind him, steel clashed against steel as the guardian held the intruders at bay, but the sound of gunfire soon followed. The night was strong, but Elias feared it could not hold them for long. The path opened into a spiral stair carved into living rock. With every step, sand sifted from the ceiling, proof that the fortress was as fragile as the secrets it hid. Torches mounted on the walls sputtered, guiding his way, until finally, he burst through an archway into the open desert night. The sky stretched infinite, a tapestry of stars shimmering like watchful eyes. For a moment, Elias paused, inhaling the dry, sharp air, the Codex pressed against his chest. But the reprieve was short-lived. Voices rose behind him, closer now, ruthless in their pursuit. Far on the horizon, lanterns glimmered, Bedouin riders who had guided him earlier, loyal to his cause. Hope flickered. If he could reach them, the desert would swallow his enemies whole. Elias sprinted across the sand, each footfall heavy, each heartbeat thunderous. The Codex was safe for now, but in the distance, he heard a gunshot crack, a reminder that shadows never stop chasing the light. The desert stretched endlessly, pale under the silver gaze of the moon. Elias ran, the Codex clutched tightly, every grain of sand a challenge to his weary legs. Behind him, the rival pursuers rode with relentless determination, their shadows stretching long and jagged across the dunes. Gunshots cracked the still night, shattering the silence like jagged glass. Elias risked a glance. Lanterns glimmered far behind, betraying their numbers. The pursuers knew the terrain well, but he knew one thing they didn't: the desert itself could be an ally. He veered sharply toward a narrow canyon hidden by the dunes, hoping the shadows of its walls would conceal his flight. As he sprinted, a strange silhouette emerged ahead, a lone rider on a black camel, cloaked in flowing fabric, face hidden beneath a scarf. Without a word, the stranger guided Elias into the labyrinthine passages of the canyon. Sand swirled violently around them, stirred by a sudden, ghostly wind. The pursuers entered the canyon blindly, stumbling over rocks, their cries swallowed by the echoing cliffs. The rider stopped at a small oasis, hidden from any map, where a well of cool water reflected the stars above. Elias leaned over, panting, feeling the weight of the Codex and the desert's punishing night. Who are you?" he gasped. The figure's voice was calm, ancient, almost musical. "I am a keeper of the old ways," the rider said. "Like you, I have waited for one worthy of the Templar secret. Your path is perilous, young seeker. But if you survive the desert, you will reach the city where the final fragment of the cipher awaits." Elias' heart thumped with both fear and hope. He had survived the chase, but the desert was only the first of many trials. The Codex of Light was safe for now, but the shadows would never stop hunting the truth. Elias arrived at the city as the sun dipped behind jagged rooftops, painting the streets in shades of blood and gold. It was a place of labyrinthine alleys, where whispers of hidden deals and unseen eyes lingered in every corner. The final fragment of the Templar Cipher was rumored to be here, safeguarded by a secret society that had survived in the shadows for centuries. The streets pulsed with life, but Elias felt the weight of countless eyes upon him. Every market stall, every flickering lantern, every stranger passing by could conceal a watcher. He clutched the Codex of Light, now a beacon to both seekers of knowledge and those who craved power. The air was thick with intrigue, the scent of spices mingling with smoke and tension. In a narrow courtyard, Elias discovered an entrance hidden behind a faded tapestry. Beyond it lay a library unlike any he had seen, a place where the walls themselves seemed to breathe, lined with manuscripts chained to iron railings, scrolls wrapped in velvet, and vaults secured by elaborate locks. Here, the final fragment awaited. But as he reached for it, shadows moved. Cloaked figures emerged from the corners, forming a circle around him. Their leader stepped forward, a man whose eyes glowed with a fanatic intensity. "The knowledge of the Templars is not for the untested," he warned. "Only those who survive this night may claim it." Elias' hands shook, yet he stood tall. The lessons of the Pyrenees, the desert, and the hidden fortress had forged him. He realized the cipher was more than a map. It was a test, a crucible for those seeking ultimate understanding. The final challenge had begun, and the city itself seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the outcome of this deadly confrontation. Elias stood at the center of the shadowed library, the figures surrounding him like predators circling prey. His mind raced, recalling every lesson, every clue the Templars had left across mountains, deserts, and ancient fortresses. The Codex of Light pulsed faintly, as if sensing the nearness of its final piece. The leader of the shadowed society stepped closer, a key dangling from a chain. "The last fragment is mine," he said, voice low but commanding. "Do you understand what you hold in your hands, boy? With this knowledge, kingdoms can rise or fall." Elias swallowed fear and stepped forward. "I understand," he replied calmly, "but knowledge is not meant to rule, it is meant to guide. The Templars protected it for centuries for a reason. I will not let it fall into hands blinded by ambition." The leader sneered and lunged, but Elias reacted with a swift motion, tossing a hidden smoke vial from his satchel. A thick, swirling mist enveloped the library. Lanterns flickered, shadows danced wildly, and the intruders were momentarily blinded. Using the chaos, Elias grabbed the final fragment, a slender scroll sealed with a wax emblem matching the Codex, and pressed it against the existing parchments. The Codex shone with a radiant light, illuminating the library as if 1,000 candles had been lit at once. The fragments aligned perfectly, revealing the complete Templar cipher. Symbols, maps, star charts, and secret formulas merged into a single, coherent truth. Elias realized that the Templars had not only preserved knowledge, they had created a guide, a blueprint for enlightenment, meant to transcend greed and fear. When the mist cleared, the shadowed society had vanished, leaving Elias alone. The city seemed quieter, as if it too had acknowledged the triumph of the worthy. Clutching the fully restored Codex, Elias understood that his journey was far from over, yet he now held the ultimate key, the knowledge of the Templars, safe for the first time in centuries. Elias emerged from the library into the quiet night, the Codex of light heavy in his hands, not with weight, but with responsibility. The city's streets, once alive with shadows and intrigue, now seemed to hold their breath. He had obtained the Templars' ultimate secret, yet the victory was bittersweet. Knowledge so powerful could illuminate or destroy, elevate or enslave. He climbed to the rooftop of an ancient watchtower, gazing at the stars that had guided him across mountains, deserts, and cities. The cipher in his hands pulsed faintly, a heartbeat of wisdom. He knew the shadowed society would return, relentless in their pursuit, and countless others would covet the Codex. The world was not yet ready for such power, and yet he could not simply hide it forever. Elias pondered the Templar oath, whispered through centuries, to protect, to guide, to test the worthy. The Codex was more than a book, it was a living legacy. He resolved to become its guardian, traveling in secret, leaving traces only for those proven capable of understanding its message. He would safeguard the knowledge until humanity was ready for it, sharing it not for glory or conquest, but for enlightenment and the betterment of all. As dawn broke, painting the horizon with gold and crimson, Elias tucked the Codex into a hidden satchel and descended into the city. The shadows of his pursuers still lurked, but he walked undaunted. He was no longer a mere historian. He was the keeper of the Templar legacy, the bridge between past and future. The journey was far from over. Secrets still waited to be discovered, dangers still lurked in every corner of the world, but Elias carried with him the light of knowledge, the treasure that the Templars had protected at any cost. Years passed, and the world continued unaware of the treasure hidden in plain sight. Elias traveled across continents, always in shadow, always vigilant. The Codex of Light remained close to his heart, its knowledge protected from those who would twist it for power, yet subtly guiding those worthy of its wisdom. In quiet monasteries, hidden libraries, and secluded valleys, he left fragments of insight, tiny sparks meant to inspire scholars, healers, and explorers. He became a ghost of history, whispered about in legends but never seen, a guardian of truths that could reshape empires. And yet, he never forgot the journey that had forged him. The Pyrenees, the desert, the hidden fortress, the trials of the chalice, and the final confrontation in the city, all these moments attested not just his courage, but his soul. The Templars had chosen wisely. The Codex had found its keeper. One night, beneath a sky of endless stars, Elias opened the Codex and traced the symbols. In the quiet, he imagined the Templar scribe from centuries past, smiling at the continuity of their legacy. The knowledge had survived fire, betrayal, and oblivion, and now it would endure through him. The adventure that had begun with a fragment of a manuscript in a quiet village had transformed Elias into a legend. The Codex remained a light in the shadows, a promise that wisdom could triumph over greed. And somewhere, beyond mountains and deserts, beyond time itself, the Templars' vision waited to guide the next seeker. The world was full of secrets, but one truth remained eternal: knowledge, when protected and shared wisely, could illuminate even the darkest corners of history. Elias, the Keeper, had become the bridge between past and future, and the story of the Lost Templar Cipher would endure forever.